is Career Seeker Show live on WPPM FM 106.5 Philadelphia. As I had mentioned prior to the break, we are back with Jeffery Abramowitz. He is here. I told you he was going to come early. I knew it. I said Jeffery will be here before the 4:30 show break, and we'll be able to have some more time with him. So I really appreciate you coming out, my friend. Ladies and gentlemen, Jeffery Abramowitz, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks, Ken. Thanks for having me.
Man, I really appreciate you being here. I know we had some conversations, and we spoke about some of the things you're doing with Mike Robinson up there. And we had Mike on the show a couple weeks ago, and I think you told me you listened into that one.
I did. Actually, no, I did listen to it. Mike and I are very good friends.
Yes.
And Mike and I facilitate the NOW program, New Opportunities Workshop at Temple together. And he has got a very special place with my heart, so he's a good guy.
That's definitely. Mike raises the bar pretty high, but we're going to jump over that bar with this interview. Not sure, I know earlier I had a chance to introduce you to Tiffany Sutherland, a.k.a. Tiff South. I wanted to tell you, Tiff has a great blog that you guys could possibly share with the students in the NOW and the Opportunities Now, well, the New Opportunities Workshops. Tiff, why don't you speak to that a little? I'm serious.
So it's a podcast, and it's called How Does She Do It? And I just talk about really empowerment and just blending the way our personal development and our career development intersect, and really just trying to offer encouragement to people, practical insight and an honest perspective based on my own experience. So it could be something useful for your students to take a listen to. It's on iTunes, and anywhere podcasts are is where the show can be found.
Yeah, it's really great. I know I've came out to the workshops that you guys do. Wow, I guess it's been about 5 years in running now that I've assisted Mike with those workshops. And the one thing I always share with him, I'm so impressed at the students. I'm just so impressed with the students that he has participating in that program. It's like you want to hire everybody. You really wish you could hire everybody. So I think that's a testament to some of the outreach they do, but also the level of preparation that he puts into it to get them to that point.
Yeah, it's an outstanding program, and it's actually on Thursday night is their registration program. If you have any interest, contact Temple University and Michael Robinson, and they're doing the interviewing and the orientation program is this Thursday night at 6 o'clock.
No, that's a great idea. If you want to reach out to Mike, you can catch him at 215-204-0677. I believe that is his office number out there at Temple University, and I'm sure he'll give you all the information. Do you know if they have a website or anything like that?
I'm not sure that they have a website, but I know you can reach them directly at Temple.
Great. Well, enough of speaking about Mike. I really wanted to, speak to you. I just think some of the things that you're doing out here are so important for the Philadelphia community as a whole. So I really commend you. But if you don't mind, kind of sharing how you got involved in a lot of this reentry and felony-friendly work, and just kind of what led you on this path. Like how'd you start doing so much of this?
Well, it hasn't been a pretty journey, I'll tell you that. Okay. I was a trial lawyer in Philadelphia for a little over 20 years, and a partner in a firm in Philly. I did civil trial litigation and made some horrible choices in life and in practice. It led to a federal indictment several years ago, and that federal indictment sent me to a federal prison facility for a little over 4 years with a 5-year sentence. And I was released last September, so I haven't been out that long. I was released here into Philadelphia. And I will tell you that the journey's been incredible. It's changed my life dramatically. And when you go away and you realize that you've lost everything, you sort of get a new perspective on life, and you try to find out what your passion is. And I sort of found my passion. I got very lucky because when I was discharged from the United States Federal Penitentiary up in USP Canaan, I was returned back to Philadelphia into the halfway house system here, which is currently just in horrible shape, and lived in North Philadelphia at a halfway house that's recently been closed because of its condition. And I was so blessed because during that period of time, I was able to walk into Community Learning Center and happened to bump into a lady at the front desk and gave her my resume, because while I was away, I taught 45 or 50 classes in GED, math, and all these different education classes.
So you kept yourself really busy.
I did. I tried to learn as much as I could from the lesson that I was handed. reading thousands of books and just being active as much as I could. trying to find out why I was on this journey and where it was going to lead me. So when I came back, I was walking down on a path from the halfway house and walked into Community Learning Center and gave the lady behind the desk my resume, and she sort of looked at me with a funny face, and then I came back the week later on another pass, and I said, look, I just need a job. And she looks at me and she says, son, I just laid off most of my staff, and you're here asking for a job. And if you remember last year, the state budget crisis was going on, and
Yes.
many nonprofits were closing their doors. I said, look, just give me a job. I'll answer phones, I'll teach math, I'll do whatever I can. But when you get the funding, just find a place that's right for me. And I started teaching math and did what I could, answering phones and everything else. And on January 6th of last year, I was promoted to a director of student services and workforce development at Community Learning Center.
You know, I noticed that. So as I'm hearing your story, I'm like, so this is a guy that walked in there and handed them a resume, and I don't know how many months later, he's a director at that location. That's unbelievable. That's an incredible story.
It wasn't long, but I have to tell you, Community Learning Center is an amazing organization, and I can't speak highly enough about it, because everyone that walks through our door gets a second chance.
Okay.
We're located in North Philadelphia, Broad and Lehigh, and also in West Philadelphia on 63rd Street between Race and Vine.
Gotcha.
And we handle some of the hardest to serve in Philadelphia, people that are unemployed, that don't have a GED, that are looking for math and reading support, that need ESL support, that want to get back to work. They just need the guidance and the direction to do it. And CLC has a tremendously committed staff that does just that. We can't put somebody in a job. We're not going to just throw you into McDonald's or Burger King or any of a fast food restaurant just to say you're there. We help you find that pathway so that you have a decent job with decent wages and with some future for advancement so that you can move forward. And so that started my launch of where I am. I've also been really lucky that the director of Community Learning Center said, Jeff, I know your passion's reentry, follow it, see where it goes.
Okay.
And we were able to strike a partnership with CareerLink Suburban Station.
So I noticed that you guys do some things with CareerLink, and I wanted you to speak about that. I believe you have some sessions that take place on Tuesdays.
We do some great things. There's 3 programs that we have at CareerLink. One is a high school equivalency program where you can get your GED. One is an upskilling program where we take people that are unemployed and we give them math and reading support so that we can get them into a trade. And a trade could be anything from a computer trade to welding to forklift or heavy equipment training, or food safety, ServSafe certifications, and giving them that trade and helping them get educated so that they can go back into the workforce and they know how to do fractions and decimals and operate a computer, those digital literacy skills that are so important. So we have a program like that, and then the program that's my passion is really reentry. So in August, I started a reentry program at CareerLink. It's a reentry boot camp, and it's 2.5 hours. It starts at 9 o'clock every single Tuesday, or actually 10 o'clock every single Tuesday.
So that's the CareerLink on JFK, correct?
It is 1617 JFK. It's the 2nd floor, and you don't have to pre-register. All you need to do is just come down and into the workshop.
Excellent.
It's every single Tuesday, and you don't just have to be recently out of prison. Anyone that's got a criminal record that has a barrier is going to learn how to deal with your resume, how to deal with the interview, and addressing your criminal background of where you were during a certain period of time, and then trying to map out your strategy of how am I going to get back to work. And there's so many tools that are available. People just have to know they're out there, from tax credits to ban the box laws and all these other things that are there that can help people.
No, you walked me into a question that I wanted to ask. Can you explain the whole ban the box process?
Sure. Ban the box is a law. It's been around for a little while. Within the last year or so, it's really taken hold in Philadelphia. And the law is pretty clear. The ban the box law says that if you're a Philadelphia employer, and that's really important because it doesn't apply to employers outside of Philadelphia, but if you're a Philadelphia employer with 1 employee or more, so it's pretty much everyone, that you cannot ask the question, have you been convicted of a felon or a crime before? You can't ask that in the application process.
Okay.
In fact, you can't ask it until there's been a conditional offer of employment. So until that person says to you, the employer says, we want to hire you and this is what we want to hire you at,
At that point in time, they can say, well, what's your background? And then they can delve into it. Now, there are some exceptions you should be aware of, and there are some occupations that you are permitted to ask the question. For example, if you're trying to become a law enforcement officer, they can ask the question.
Gotcha.
If you're going to work in a hospital or in a school, they can ask the question. So it doesn't apply for all employers, but generally if you're a retailer or if you're going for a construction job in Philadelphia, they can't ask that question, and it gets you in the game. It gets you in the door, and that's the most important thing when you talk about reentry, is opening the door for people to have a fair shot so they can walk in and say, look, these are the skills I have, this is what I can do. And that's really the most important thing. So ban the box is important. I encourage people if they encounter employers in Philadelphia that are asking the question, that the Philadelphia Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, they need to know about it, and there's complaint forms that can be filed or a complaint that can be filed, and people can look into it. But it's very important that they answer the question. One other thing, when you see it, if you're a returning citizen or if you have a criminal background and you are applying for a job, the cardinal rule across the board is be honest. Mm-hmm. Be honest. If you have a criminal background, let them know you have a criminal background. And, you have to deal with it. But everyone that was incarcerated, while they were away, they gained some skills. When I was away, I worked in a garage, and I learned how to change oil. I didn't even know where oil was in a car. I changed oil and brakes and all those things that I never knew before. But I got skills while I was away. And there were some people that even were operating forklifts or worked in a commercial kitchen serving 1,800 prisoners. Those are all skills that are very helpful when they go out into the workforce. And they can't just ignore them. They need to be able to put them on their resume. They need to talk about them. And those are the things employers look for when they go to hire you.
And that was actually going to be my question, because I think it's important. I mean, first of all, thank you for sharing your story. And you have so many different, I'm like taking notes over here, and there's so many different amazing things to grab onto. But I want to talk a little bit about, in relation to ban the box, in relation to someone's resume, and before in the application process, before you get to even have a conversation with an employer, how does someone, as they're preparing their application, as they're preparing their resume, how do they address this gap, this perceived gap on their resume, so that they don't even so that they don't get passed over by a potential employer?
Yeah, there's two ways. Look, I mean, the cardinal rule is when you apply for a job, you really should sit down and look at the job description and use the keywords that the job description has contained in it, and include that in your resume. But when it comes to people that have been away and returning citizens, it's important to look at all the skills and things you've done while you're away. That period of time, things occurred, and you may have taught or had a class inside. You may have taught a class inside. You may have gone to workshops inside. You may have gotten your ServSafe certification inside. You have to look at your skills. And a resume is all about your accomplishments. So it's all about what you've done, and you have to think hard. What are the skills that I've learned the past few years? And it may be I read 30 books, or I kept journals, or whatever I did. But you can't just ignore it. So you have to look and address that period of time and say, look, I'm not proud of what I did, but this is where I'm at. And I also encourage people that when we talk to Ken, you mentioned your elevator speech, and it's so important for every returning citizen, as well as anyone applying for a job, to have that elevator speech down pat. And that is not relitigating their past. That's looking at where they are now, the lessons that they've learned, and putting everything in a positive light. So people can say, look, these are the lessons I learned while I was away. I'm a better person for that. And this is where I hope to be in the future. And this is what I bring to the table.
We speak about the importance of knowing your story and being able to share that story in an interview setting. I just believe when people can package things together that allow them to kind of explain how they got to where they are at this current moment, it just helps the person on the other side understand it a little better. And even remember it and be able to share it going forward through the interview process. If you have to interview with multiple people, sometimes it's great to have an advocate at the beginning that kind of will walk you through and say, okay, listen, here's how I understood this.
And you're so right. But returning citizens in Philadelphia have to understand. Anyone with a criminal background has to understand what the process is and the things that they need to know, and that there's help out there. One of the biggest problems we have now, we have In Philadelphia alone, 35,000 people return to Philadelphia every year from the prison system.
I'm sorry, you said 35,000?
35,000 people return to Philadelphia every year. Now that doesn't even include the people that are currently have criminal backgrounds in Philadelphia, which are in the hundreds of thousands, if not millions.
Sure.
What I think that people need to know is that there are resources out there. There are programs out there that can help people, and there are ways of finding out information by going to workshops like at CareerLink. And we're doing a similar workshop. Actually, tonight when I leave here, I was asked to do a workshop, reentry workshop down at Temple University, and that will be at 5:30 to 7:30. So these programs and that information has to get out to the public, so they know there's a place to go. And again, it's not just for people that have recently been out. It's for anybody that's got something in their criminal past that they need to deal with and address.
Right.
Tiff Sutherland, Alberta Bertolino, the Career Seekers Show, Kenneth L. Johnson, up to the minute information. Jeffrey is here until 5, and he has to be somewhere at 5:30 to help career seekers. I love it. That is great, man. Your commitment to this is incredible. You spoke about a lot of services being offered, and I know I've heard about expungement services and expungement programs and workshops. Can you tell me a little bit about how that works and what that involves for people? What's the benefit to that to ex-offenders?
There's a lot of benefit to the expungement programs that are out there. The benefit, and these are my personal philosophies on them, so I don't impugn anyone's program. But the expungement programs that are out there are wonderful because they give people the opportunity to actually wipe out their past, so to speak, so that it can't be seen by an employer, and it's not out there for fair game, and it really sort of tucks their past away for them to keep for themselves and in their little private cubby. And that's an important thing when you talk about getting back into the workforce. When it comes to reentry, I want you to remember this, and for everyone that's listening that's thinking about an expungement or even a pardon, and it is that those things take time.
Sure.
And in Philadelphia, a lot of people don't have time. They don't have time. They need to feed their family. They need to pay the rent. They need to put clothes on their kids. They need to do all the things to support their families. So while you're going through that process, don't stop going to the workshops. Don't work for that expungement to wait for that expungement to come through. Don't wait for that pardon, but be aggressive about it. And if you have that process started, that's great. If it comes through, wow, then you just hit the lottery.
Sure.
But don't wait to do that. And there are a lot of great programs coming up. There's one recently that I'm working on with Senator Sharif Street and Lieutenant Governor Mike Stack, which is coming up at Dobbins High School on Monday.
Okay.
From 5:30 to 9:30 at Dobbins. They're doing a Pathways to Pardons program where it's a wonderful program. The Pennsylvania Board of Pardons is going to be there with a staff of attorneys that are going to help people apply for pardons and get the process going. So if you have your criminal docket with you, bring whatever papers you have, and you'll get a one-on-one with somebody that's going to give you some guidance. Yes, you qualify. This is what you have to do. Let's get it started. And then there's going to be workshops throughout the night. I know that we're doing a workshop on reentry and dealing with your resume and how to address the resume, how to address the job interview when you have a criminal background. And there'll be a lot of those kinds of programs going out throughout the night.
So now this is Monday the 13th, I believe. We have figured out that Monday is the 13th.
We did. Yes. I just want just a clarification, just for our listeners. What is the difference between expungement and a pardon?
An expungement is the wiping of the record. A pardon is something that's granted by the governor's office in this case, which does similar kind of thing.
Okay. Sure. Wow, Jeffery Abramowitz, excellent information. I really appreciate you taking the opportunity to share your expertise with the career seeker listeners. So you have some other things that we were speaking about earlier that you've touched in on. Not to change the pace of this, but you mentioned something earlier that caught my attention because typically when we have a guest, I try to do my due diligence, and I just kind of want to look through and just learn some things about them. You're a little different because we had met before. You've even introduced me to people out of New York. But I know you have a ton of different things going on. But real quick, I want to speak about one thing. You're a chef, huh? You're a chef. Jeffrey's a chef. So did you have that skill set prior to going away, or was that something you acquired while you were
he
away?
is good. I didn't know.
You didn't see that one coming, did you?
I did not know that. Chef is an exaggeration of my skills. Trust me.
Hold on, Tim. When you look at Jeffrey's blog, there's like a sandwich on it, or like a wrap or something of that nature.
Yes.
So.
And there's some ice cream in his past as well. I may or may not have seen something about that too.
So you can imagine the thoughts that went through my mind when I said, okay, I'm going to go to Jeffrey's blog, and there's going to be all of this reentry stuff. And I'm like, why is there a sandwich on top?
So let me explain. So this was a great experience. When my indictment came down, things got kind of crazy. I left practice, and I decided, well, what was I going to do? And I really wanted to do something fun. So I did two things. One was there was a local ice cream store and commercial bakery in our area that was for sale. And we ended up jumping in. And my daughter and all her friends in high school had the opportunity to actually come in and run this ice cream store. And they even named it. It was called Do Me a Flavor.
I like it. I like that.
So we had baked goods and ice cream, and we married the two together. And it was a great opportunity. And during this period of time, I also worked for Panera Bread.
Okay.
And when you're an employee of Panera Bread, you must go through their baking school. So I was trained as a baker and moved up their ladder to become an executive baker at Panera Bread Company. So
and you still arrived today without bread, ice cream, nothing.
Came here empty-handed, but with lots of great information. With so much great information.
But, you know what? We'll take the information. We probably owe you lunch, actually. Yeah, that's probably
Absolutely.
good.
it's okay.
No, I mean, you are doing excellent work, and I think we've mentioned a lot of resources today. We've mentioned a lot of events that are happening in the next several days. I think one that I just want to remind the listeners about is the event that happens every Tuesday, the boot camp that happens every Tuesday right on JFK. You mentioned at 10 o'clock. There's no pre-registration or anything like that, right?
Yeah, and let me just talk about the boot camp real quickly because it's really an important event. It's the kind of thing that you can walk into CareerLink, which is a tremendous resource for people. But the boot camp actually delves into the real heart of the issues. And when we talk about how do you address this on your resume, what do you do in a job interview when it comes up? What if it doesn't come up? How do you address it? And then some of the real practical resources that are available for people that are returning. Where do you go to look for a job? What's your job search strategy? And where do you target? What companies do you go to? What companies are what we call felony friendly? Do they not care? And that's all really important information. And you get that all in a matter of 2 hours. But more importantly, you also get a workforce advisor from CareerLink that's going to help you along through that process. And those resources are invaluable for people that are returning.
Absolutely. So every Tuesday at 10 o'clock, if you please access that resource.
What is that, 1617 JFK?
1617 JFK, second floor.
All right, and tell a friend if you don't need it yourself, please be sure to share the information with someone else.
No, we'll also add that information on the Career Seekers site. We'll post it on Twitter. If you want to check us out, www.careerseekers.work. We plan on sharing this information. We are broadcasting live on Facebook Live, East Coast Executives Facebook fan page. So this information is going nowhere. It will be there. You can re-listen to Jeffrey's interview and just write down the information. Take the information. He's dropping gems on you, Philadelphia. So please be appreciative of that. Jeffrey, anything else you want to share with the listeners? I know you have to run. I'm going to try to get you out of here early, but is there anything else you want to share with our listeners? How do they reach Jeffrey?
Absolutely. To reach me, I'm located at Community Learning Center, and I can be reached at our office 215-426 Broad and Lehigh. We also have facilities in West Philadelphia on North 63rd Street. So that's the best place to reach me.
All right. Well, hopefully your phone lines are hopefully they are blowing up after today, and hopefully not too much that you can't sustain it. I think that you are doing excellent work, and I'm actually interested. I will be following up with you to see what can I do to help with some of the great work that you're doing and the organizations that you're a part of. But I really appreciate you. We really appreciate you coming on the show and sharing your story with us and sharing your experiences and resources with our listeners.
It was my pleasure.
It's the Career Seekers Show live on WPPM FM 106.5 Philadelphia. We'll be back after the break. Man, you are incredible, man. You are doing some unbelievable things, man. I'm so appreciative you coming in. Listen, we may need to pencil you in quarterly. I'm serious, because I just think that It's information that people need,
And I seriously want to see
It's
the
only
work that you're talking
It's only
about.
the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah,
So,
sure.
I can imagine.
Sure. When you said 5:30, I'm like, shit, I want to get him out of here. Like he said, yeah, I'm like, I'll get him out by quarter of. Yeah, so.
No, that's awesome.
So this is, I really do want to see how I can help in some capacity, because sounds like there's enough work to be done.
Yeah,
For sure.
there's plenty. And this is for the temple.
Great, I'll make some of this stuff and do out too. Yeah, that's great. I really appreciate you. I didn't want to.
It's funny, you know, when I came to Mike. Mike was my first contact when I left prison.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah, Mike and Myra Brown at Career Link.
Okay.
And they said to me, we can help you.
Mm-hmm.
And I started Mike's class the second I got out.
Yeah.
And
And look at you now, giving back the exact same thing that was doing.
you know what? I tell everybody this. I get more satisfaction at a place with somebody in a job, helping out somebody's returning, than any verdict I've ever got.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Well, look, you spoke about passion. I always speak about purpose. I think you found it, my friend.
Yeah, I think I have. I love it. So, but anything I can do for you guys, let me know.
Appreciate it,
Thank you
man.
so much.
Hey, look, I'm gonna have some ice cream tonight. You won't mind, trust me. All right.
Yeah, thanks. I owe you one too, throwing that up there.
I was like, you know what? I gotta talk to him about this sandwich up here, this chef thing that he has going on.
Yeah.
So, Chef, you leading in after the break?
Sure. What are we gonna be talking about?
I have no idea.
We got to
All right, so I tell you what we're gonna speak about.
Okay.
Let's speak about.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You go too.
It was so nice to meet you.
meeting
Enjoy the rest of your night.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Salute,
You
my
need
friend.
anything else, let me know, all right?
Appreciate it.
All right,
All
take
right.
care.
See you, bud. Take care, Jeff. See you guys.
So, all right.
Forget that we're live when we're talking about
I know.
Aren't you supposed to break it?
We started so late. Yeah. Like, it's real slow. So I was thinking. I don't know. So we gonna go. We got about 14 minutes to think of some things. So we'll get through it. All right. So know what I want to speak to you about? I got it. So I'm gonna fly some things by you.
All right, as long as it's nothing about me quoting the law, I'll talk about the law.
Nothing like that. So yeah, I'm gonna fly some things by you from from the program I did for UL
Okay.
last week. It goes to the end there, so I gotta find it first.
You know what we could do next time? It's review season. Review season is starting.
Oh yeah, you're right. It's the Career Seeker Show live on WPPM FM 106.5 Philadelphia, Tiff South, Alberta Bertolino, Will Martin is the Career Seeker team, Tiffany Sutherland. Wow.
Good afternoon. That was, Jeffrey was amazing.
Simply amazing.
Absolutely amazing. There's so many great resources. I think it's what is so interesting. I mean, when he said 35,000 people are returning citizens to Philadelphia every year, and that does not include people who are currently living in Philly with criminal records and trying to get their way back into the workplace and period. I mean, there's so much good work to be done, and there's so many good resources out there. And so I just want to encourage you to share the information that you heard today, the information that will be available on the careerseekers.work page, to just share it with someone who you know, because we all know, I mean, incarceration and having a run-in with the criminal justice system is not, every person probably knows at least one person.
Sure.
I know several. So share this information with people, because it, people just want to be productive. People want to take care of themselves. They want to help support their families. So see if you can just pass this information on so to help somebody be better.
You know, I think the piece of Jeffrey's story that I find so endearing is that he's open with his past and how his past has led him on this path and this purpose. And wow, what a price to pay. But I believe that he is doing exactly what he's meant to do right now. Yep.
And you kind of have to, right? And I think that there's a lesson in that for everyone, because all of us, it's not a matter of, you telling your business to the world per se in a way that's not productive or helpful, but we all have something. We all have a story, and we all have something that can be shared and that can benefit someone else. And so when you think about the things that you've been through, and maybe you don't share it on a radio show or you don't share it on a blog or anything like that, but when you have gone through something that has taught you a lesson, the value and part of the purpose of that experience is so that you can teach someone else that thing that you've gone through.
Sure.
And the value that you drew out of it, so that they can then draw something out of their own experience. So it's great that he was able to share that with us today.
Yeah, sharing his story, sharing the resources. And one of the things I heard in a piece of what he was speaking about regarding people and how they present themselves to employers, I just conducted a webinar, and basically it was designed around the disruptive job search. Mm-hmm. And disruptive in the sense that you're going to need to do something different than what everyone else is doing. And I think some of the tools that are out here that people can use to disrupt their job search pattern, like you just can't sit online and apply to job after job after job and get in front of people and say, oh, woe is me. Here's like he spoke about knowing how to explain your story and then positioning it where you're back to now.
Right.
This is who I am now.
Right.
And I think that's the disruptive piece. I think the less skilled career seeker may stay in that place. Mm-hmm. No, what, I can't find a job because this is my situation. Mm-hmm. And I believe he actually gave a blueprint on how you can actually say, like his story is one of resiliency. He kept coming there, and they said, look, we laid everybody off. Right. What are we going to do for you? But he was right back with his resume.
Right, exactly.
And now he's a director.
Yeah, and I mean, if you think about because life happens, right? Life is difficult for a lot of different situations, but no matter what you're going through, you have to be able to find the value in right now and connect the dots, because no one else, the world won't do it for you, right? An employer is not going to do it for you. And so if you come with the way you know that these things have been helpful to you, and you come with with what you know about the skills that you have and the things you have to offer, it's hard to turn away. I mean, you just talked about at the beginning of the show, one of your former students walking up to someone who was prepared with an elevator speech, not necessarily trying to get a job from this person, happened to mention something that she was doing based on skills that she gained, and now she's still working in that position now. Right. And so you have to, when you know what you're looking for, but you have to take advantage of the resources, because it's not something that's intuitive, right? And that's okay. You just have to take advantage of the resources that are available to learn how to speak about the things you want to be doing, and then to walk in action, in consistent action, to get from where you are to where you want to be.
Sure, yeah, you definitely build a momentum. You have a process, you have a plan, and you just keep building a momentum that kind of leads you in the path of opportunity. Right. That's my belief on it. So we were speaking about, I guess we'll call it your dream job toolkit. So a lot of different things that career seekers can use to basically advance their job search. So of course you got like a LinkedIn profile. You have a great LinkedIn profile. You may have a keyword optimized resume. And I was speaking with Alberta last week about some things, and of course, she was strong on people should leverage LinkedIn, leverage the groups, do the things necessary to put themselves in a favorable light to hiring influencers and hiring decision makers. Are there any things that you suggest to some of your career coaching clients that they use outside of course, using you? Mm-hmm. Like, all right, you got me. I'm riding with you.
And I'm the smallest part of the whole vision. I think really, I think using and leveraging LinkedIn is really another way of saying leveraging your relationships, right? Because you cannot get to any position, and Alberta's mentioned, and we've talked about the statistic, over 80% of people get their jobs not using job boards, sure, not using the online application tools for a lot of these, and these online aggregators, which are great places to start, but you have to reverse engineer that process and rack your brain to say, okay, how am I going to find a way to get to get in front of this person who has the opportunity to make a decision about hiring me. Who does my mother know? Who does my brother know? Who do my friends from school know? Who do the people on the block know, right? That is how you leverage and kind of disrupt the job search process in the way that you talked about, because relationships are the thing. I mean, I'm working with a client now who was able to land several interviews and get job offers based on relationships she had with people, not necessarily in the company that she was being interviewed for, but through other people who connected her with people. And it's like, that's because, she took the initiative to say, hey, I'm looking for this, can you help me? But she knew what she was looking for. She had her materials together, she had her elevator pitch together, and she took the consistent action to get her to that point.
And that's one of the things, they speak about is that it usually doesn't come from your first level connection. No. Second and third level connections. I have some great students from former classes, and they still reach out to me and say, hey, Ken, I was scanning through your LinkedIn connections. Can you introduce me to such and such? Mm-hmm. And typically, if I think they're on the right path, if I'm not going to make an introduction just for the sake of making an introduction.
Right.
But if I see where they're headed with it, and I see the opportunity and the synergy in the conversation, yeah, of course I'll make the introduction for them.
So let me ask you something. Under what circumstances would you not make an introduction for someone?
So one of the key things for me to make an introduction, I'll ask a person why. Mm. Don't tell me, well, because I think it would be good to work there. You have to have an opportunity that you're interested in and or a reason behind reaching out. Mm. Let's just say, let's just say it's Panera Bread. Jeffrey was speaking about working there. Well, if you tell me, I'm really interested in opening up a pastry store or whatever that may be, and I just kind of want to learn. I believe they have some best practices in the industry, and I just think that would be a great place to kind of learn. So, when 10 years down the road or 5 years down the road, when I decide to open up a place, I'll have training directly from them. All right, let's position it. Let's make an introduction because I think you're headed in the right direction. I don't want to send people to my connections just for the sake of them connecting and then I don't want people reaching out saying to my connections, I need a job. You have to have something that you're working with. Right. How do you add value? How do you solve a problem that they may be experiencing?
Right.
And if you can position that, then I think we're in the right direction.
Right. So basically, don't step correct. Don't come with nothing to offer, and don't come with nothing to not knowing what you want.
Sure.
You can't because we could all get better jobs, right? We could all find somebody who's paying us more money and all that kind of stuff. But you want to be able to know what you're looking for, be clear about what you're looking for, and know what you're asking for from the person that you're trying to have you be the kind of broker the relationship. Because connections are precious, right? Our networks are important to us, and people like Ken have worked really, really hard to cultivate those relationships. So whoever you're asking, keep that in mind. And in the same way, think about it for yourself. Would you just pass on any old body to anybody you know just because they asked you to, or would you expect them to have or meet certain kind of standards and expectations before you made that connection?
Exactly. So I would imagine you get asked a lot to make introductions. Well, actually, we just had an introduction situation recently, but we were working on a purpose. Mm-hmm. But so how do you decide who you're going to introduce someone to and who you're not?
It's I think very much a lot along the lines of what you said. You have to, I have to be able to almost vouch for you, because once my name is attached to another relationship, then my connection and my relationship is on the line. And I've had people who have, I've made connections to someone that was in my network, and the person that I connected them to didn't follow through. And then my friend came back to me and was like, oh, well, what's up? And I was like, you know what? And that was a lesson for me. I was like, okay, well, here are the expectations. Here's what I'm going to need to see. I need to see consistency. I want to see your materials before you send them along to this other person, so you don't have me looking raggedy. Sure. And I don't have you looking raggedy, right? We want to make sure that everybody's looking their very best before we send them forward. But we want everyone to be advantaged by the connection. It might not lead to a specific job. It might not lead to, $1 million deal, but a relationship can always has the potential to be beneficial. So we just want to make sure that everyone is looking their best. But, like I said before, you just have to step correct to whoever you're coming to, know what you're asking for, know why you want to be positioned and connected in the way that you do, and then the rest is easy from there.
I love it. I love it. It's the Career Seeker Show live on WPPM FM 106.5 Philadelphia. We'd like to thank our guest today, Jeffery Abramowitz. We'd like to thank all the listeners out there. We really appreciate you. We just want to do this. We want to be your number one source for career and job search information. If you let us do that, we'll do our thing and try our best to bring you up to the minute information about things that are going on, not only in Philadelphia, but around the world. It's the Career Seeker Show. Tiff South, I appreciate you hanging out with us today. AB, we miss you. Will Martin, thank you so very much for checking in and doing what you do. It's the Career Seeker Show. We're back next Wednesday, 4 o'clock, here on WPPM LP Philadelphia, 106.5.
All right.
Yeah, man.
Well done.
I'm doing it again.
Well done.
Yeah.